We are speaking with drummer Artimus Pyle. The new movie is Street Survivors, the true story of the Lynyrd Skynyrd Plane Crash. And as we say here in Montreal, bonjour Artimus, how are you?
Hey man, I wish the whole world could be like Canada.
Canada's a nice place to be. I don't know if you've been recently, but it's, other than the winter, it's a nice place to live. We're going to talk about this.
What does everybody call you?
Mitch. Lafon, the one and only.
Well, nice to meet you, Mitch.
Yeah, pleasure. Pleasure's mine. Let's dive right into this movie. First of all, talk to me about the process of getting it made, because it wasn't just I'm going to write this script and I'm going to get this movie made. There were lawsuits involved. There was a lot of raw emotion. Talk to me about actually getting it to this point where it's been released and people can go see it.
Well, we actually released it at the beginning of COVID.
Right.
Down here in the States. And it's been out for a while, but I'm looking at the movie and the soundtrack that I did with my sons.
Right.
And my band and my friends, as a new product. I'm looking at it as a new release because, the black hole, the vacuum that was created by COVID all over the world, it wasn't a great atmosphere to release a brand new movie and soundtrack.
No.
But I'm not complaining because, the whole world suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've lost 5 million plus human beings from the planet. And so everybody has had more important things to think about than a movie. But I understand, and we all understood, and it was a very hard process to get the movie finished. When Cleopatra Films first approached me, I thought they wanted me to write music for some movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize until, about 10 minutes into the meeting in Nashville, Tennessee, that they wanted to do the story that I had experienced in the plane crash. And so once I realized that, I told them that Judy Van Zandt, the widow of Ronnie Van Zandt,
mm-hmm.
who and Ronnie Van Zandt is the only player, the only name that I am mentioning that has any, class, talent, drive, vision. It was all Ronnie. It was his band. He was the undisputed leader. And I thought that his story, that the story of how he lost his life should be told. And I thought that, Skynyrd fans all over the world would like to know what happened on that fateful day and night.
Right.
So I realized that talking to Cleopatra Films, which is Brian Pereira,
yep.
and Tim Yasui, and they were the ones at the meeting. And I told them that Judy she's very litigious, she's very greedy, she's very controlling, and that she would get a bunch of $1,000 an hour New York City blood-sucking weasel attorneys and probably come after us. And she did.
Yep.
So we fought that fight, and Cleopatra, a lot of film companies could have folded and thrown in the towel and said, we quit. She's too much. She's got too much money. But they hung in there. And our attorneys were better than her attorneys, and we proved the truth. It went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals.
Jeez.
It was First Amendment. 3 judges voted against Judy and her attackers, and in our favor in the end when it went to the Court of Appeals. So she lost, we won, we finished the movie. But you're right, Mitch. I mean, we were under duress the entire time making the film because Judy and her nasty attorneys were constantly making threats and attacking us, and just things that weren't true. And they accused me of wanting to make the film just for money.
Right.
And of course, in court, I was able to say that I did not ask for one single dollar in the process of making this movie. And that is true to this day. I don't make a penny on the movie or the soundtrack. I did it because I wanted the story told.
Right.
And I think that helped us in the Court of Appeals, that, their big thing was that I was trying to cash in. Well, I was the drummer of the band. I was on that plane. I flew that plane. I was there because my heart put me there,
Right.
not because of money. And that's the way it has been, and that's the way it is. I didn't do it for money. I don't make a penny on the movie.
Right.
So we finished the film, and we're very happy about the ruling. And, those young actors and actresses were portraying us in our 20s, and it was a movie that may never have been seen. It could have been shelved. And so they still put their hearts and souls into the roles.
Wow.
So, to Cleopatra Films and everybody involved on this film, our director, Jared Cohn, I have much respect for them.
Yeah, and Brian Pereira always does great work. He's done fabulous stuff with Cleopatra, and also the Deadline imprint that puts out all those different CDs. I guess let's talk a little bit about the crash. First and foremost, you're here today talking to me about it. Why do you think you survived? Was it where you were sitting in the plane? Was it you have your seatbelt on? The hand of God came down and grabbed you? What sort of your view as to why you're here?
Well, everything that you just said,
right,
is a part of it. I have, I've been in a lot of airplane crashes. That was one of three. I've had many car wrecks, motorcycle wrecks. I've been shot, stabbed. I've never thought that watched my life go before my eyes. I never watched my life flash.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew that I would survive these things that have happened to me, and they were physical things. As it turns out, the plane crashes and car wrecks and motorcycle wrecks weren't the worst thing that I had to survive in my life. But, as you say, the hand of God, and I do believe in God. I believe that there's something after this life, and I'm not going to get religious and try to cram anything down anybody's throat, because everybody has their own belief. And I lived in Jerusalem, Israel, in the castle of King David on Mount Zion for 3 years. And I studied Old Testament. And, I just have a feeling that there's something after this, and there's a higher power. If I try to think it too much, my little human brain would explode. So I just accept it. I guess that's what they call faith. And so, the actual physical surviving, I'm a pilot. My father was killed in a plane crash. All my friends were killed in plane crashes. I've been in 3. So when I went to the cockpit, I wanted to assess the situation. And I kept going from the cockpit back into the cabin. I told everybody to tighten their seatbelts, get a pillow for impact, lean over during impact, everything that I had been taught. And my Marine Corps training, I flew back seat on A4C Skyhawks fighter bombers in the Marine Corps. I've flown jets. I flew those A4Cs from the back seat. And I have a feel for flight. So I was going into the cockpit, seeing what was going on, going back into the cabin, and, giving instructions as though I were, a steward or stewardess. And finally, I went to the front, and we had run out of gas. We were basically a glider, and we had trouble with the right engine. It was using too much fuel. We used more fuel than we needed to on the way to Louisiana from Greenville, South Carolina. We took on 400 gallons in Greenville. The plane was a 1947. The gauges were not trustworthy. I flew that plane, and I also flew our plane previous to that, which was a Rolls-Royce powered turboprop, which was faster and more responsive and a better plane. It belonged to Jerry Lee Lewis. The plane that we crashed was red, white, and blue. They had painted our name on it, on the nose. So we kind of felt it, obligated. Well, that's our plane. But it was, the way it flew was sluggish. It was a reciprocal, Pratt and Whitney powered, and it needed some work. So we were going to try to get it to Dallas, and at some point, or we were going to trade it in for a Learjet and buy a Learjet. The band had agreed to buy a brand new Learjet for the band, and then 2 brand new tour buses for the crew and for our backup singers, the 3 girls, so that they would be safe and comfortable, and they would follow the equipment. And then our flight time would be not 2.5 hours, but maybe 45 minutes in a Learjet. So that was the plan. But of course, we crashed, and Ronnie was killed, and that changed everything. Our management company, Peter Rudge, Sir Productions up in New York City, turned his back on us and left us for dead. Wow. Our record company, MCA Records, Mike Maitland and that crowd, they turned their back on us and left us for dead. Would not even help with money that they were going to have to give us anyway for everybody, because I called Mike Maitland at MCA, and I said, we need help. We need money. You're going to send it to us over the years anyway. Comptroll it in Los Angeles, but we need, we're splattered in 5 different hospitals, and the band and crew needs help. And he turned his back on us 100%, said there's nothing I can do, and basically hung up on me. Wow. That was MCA Records and Mike Maitland, and our management company, Peter Rudge and Sir Productions. I was shocked. I got to tell you, that I was definitely shocked. But I put it in the movie. Wow. And the movie is accurate. We did what we could do. Right. On a $1,800,000 budget, which is a good low budget.
But do you think, by the way, they turned your back on you just because you weren't going to be a profitable band touring anymore? Or did they turn their back on you for legal reasons, like, hey, we can't be associated because we might get sued and we don't want to be part of this? Or are they just jerks? I mean, why did they why not support Skynyrd at that time? Again,
Mitch, I have to say, you just pretty much covered it.
Right.
They're jerks. They're devious. They're dishonest. And all of those reasons, everything that you mentioned, right. They for all the wrong reasons, they turned their back on us, when if they would have just supported us through that, everybody would have had now nothing could have been done about Ronnie's death. He was gone. He was going to divorce Judy Van Zandt. The divorce papers were in the briefcase of the manager on the plane when we crashed. But of course, Ronnie was killed. He wasn't able to serve the papers. Judy hit the lottery. She inherited a $1 billion band, and she gained multi-millions of dollars, and she has used that money over all these years to try to destroy us, the band, and the music of Lynyrd Skynyrd. But destroying us little human beings in the band was easy, because we're just idiot guys.
Right.
We're just a bunch of dummies.
Right.
And she was able to use lawyers and manipulation and lies and cheating and stealing to destroy us in the band, because we're musicians and we love music, but we just didn't know much about the business and how attorneys and people like her work.
Right.
So, she was able to destroy us, but she was not able to destroy the music, because the music that Ronnie Van Zant wrote, I can attest. I go out with my band every weekend, and we play all over the country. A few weeks ago, we were in Minnesota and Iowa.
Right.
And a couple of weeks ago, we opened up for Dolly Parton in Nashville, Tennessee, to raise money for the Susan Komen Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation. And it was beautiful. We played at the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Wow.
They asked us to do Sweet Home Alabama and then Simple Man, which are two incredibly beautiful songs.
Absolutely.
And every song that Ronnie wrote is a strong song. He did not write hit songs. He wrote hit albums. And therefore, I sit for hours after shows and hear where fans were when we crashed that airplane, and what the music means to them, and how they buried a friend to Freebird, or their class, high school prom was to be a simple man, be a simple woman, so I hear all the stories, and that is my duty, because I'm the only member of Lynyrd Skynyrd left other than Ronnie. Gary.
Gary.
I've got Ronnie on my mind.
Yeah.
Gary Rossington and I are the two left that were on that plane that are original inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Lynyrd Skynyrd members. And Gary is surrounded by some very sinister people that keep his friends and people that love him away from him so that they can steal more money.
Right.
And they do that. And so, I've answered your question because you answered it yourself.
I did. I want to ask you just this about the moments leading up to the crash, because I had an experience coming back from Hawaii over into LA once where we blew the tires on takeoff, and on landing they were dumping fuels. They brought us to an emergency runway, and there was plane escorts, and we hit the ground hard, and we didn't crash, but we had the foam, and anyway, it was such an event, and we knew going in that this was going to happen, and of course that fear is just like, oh my God, what was it like in the moments? How much warning did you have that this plane was going down? What was it? Did everybody sort of get on their knees and start praying? Was it sudden decompression? How much time and where you just went, oh shit, this is happening and I can't stop this?
Well, first of all, we flew at around 9,000 feet. Mm-hmm. That was so we were below, the oxygen level of 10,000 feet. Mm-hmm. So we weren't on oxygen or anything like that. And we knew for a long time that the plane had problems. And when I say a long time, I mean, the entire flight, that time, we knew we had problems. But we didn't think that we didn't have enough fuel. And, any pilot will tell you to put a wooden stick down into your tank and visually look and see if your tanks are topped off. And our tanks were not topped off. We took on 400 gallons, but we weren't, topped off. So we knew we were having problems. That's why we were discussing getting a brand new Learjet for the band. We knew that we did not want to fly on this 1947 Convair 260. It was the nomenclature was 240, 260. There were different styles of that plane. So we knew it was not a good airplane. It needed work.
Right. But you got on the plane anyway.
and we were a rock and roll band
That had to move. That
was,
had to get going.
That was so happy to have gigs to go to,
Right.
that we didn't put enough question into whether we got on that plane. We had people that were getting paid lots of money every time we played a show. There was a big percentage that went to Peter Rudge up in New York, and we were paying road managers and managers, and we had a whole line of people that were on the payroll that we expected to give us the straight scoop and let us know if that plane was safe. Now, we didn't realize that all of these people had different agendas and things that were important to them, and our safety was not on that agenda.
Right.
And so they made one mistake after another, and a plane crash, as you well know, you've been, and I know exactly how you felt on that return
trust me,
from Hawaii.
I felt really fucking scared for hours.
And we were scared. Yeah, we weren't scared as long as you were.
Mm-hmm.
But I have blown tires on takeoff.
Yep.
And you never know.
Nope.
I'm a pilot. I don't have a current ticket.
Yep.
My father was a pilot, and he had just soloed. I was about to solo, and he was killed in a plane crash. So, I know what it means to blow a tire on takeoff.
Yeah, and it rattles you, especially on those big jumbo jets that are coming from Hawaii. I mean, you hear that and you just go, oh, and then they say we're going to have to do an emergency landing, and you go, oh, great.
Yeah, especially when you're salvoing fuel.
Yeah.
When you salvo,
they were dumping fuel. That was a sight to see.
Dumping fuel.
Yeah.
You're just you're keeping your fingers crossed, and still. To this day, I've been in 3 airplane crashes. I'm a hang glider pilot. My friends were killed in plane crashes. My father was killed in a plane crash. But still, I love to fly. And when I get on a plane, I say my prayers and I leave it up to the higher power like everybody else does. If I have to get on a plane, if I don't, I'd rather go on the ground. We bought a tour bus for my band. Our keyboard player purchased a bus that belonged to Lenny Kravitz. It's a 1999 Prevost.
Nice.
It's beautiful. We keep it clean as a pin. It's pearl white. We call her Pearl. It'll do 115 miles an hour. We keep it really clean, and that's our home away from home. But if I have to get on a plane, like when I was working on the movie, and I'd have to fly to Los Angeles to meet with the young people that were playing us in our 20s, and to talk to Brian and the people at Cleopatra and our director. I wouldn't even think about it. Of course, I didn't want to, but I would, get on the plane and fly to Los Angeles. I flew out there probably, I don't know, I think I remember about a half a dozen times out and back. And as you know, Mitch, that's a lot of takeoffs and landings. That's a lot of layovers. And the takeoffs and landings are the hardest part of any flights.
Yep.
So, anytime I see something on TV about a plane crash, of course, I'm on the edge of my seat watching every single detail. And I'm still like that. But, for 40 years, Mitch, I was really sad. Every time October 20th would come around, I would get clinically depressed and I'd be morbidly sad. I couldn't be around anybody. I had to spend the day in the woods, walking in the mountains. And so, but 4 years ago, because this last October 20th was the 44th year of the plane crash.
Right.
So this last October 20th, my interviews that I've done from Honolulu, Hawaii to up in Canada, which I don't know if I told you. I want to tell you, I love Canada. I loved when we toured in Canada. We played in Sudbury, where they tested the moon vehicle that they took to the moon. All the whole country of Canada. I love it. It's so beautiful. I'm kind of a wimp. I can't stand the hard winters. That's why I like living in Florida. But I'm a bit of a wimp. But the people of Canada and the country, it is so beautiful. My last show with the band before I quit the so-called Lynyrd Skynyrd, we were on the tribute tour, and I
was in Toronto
from Jerusalem. Huh?
It was in Toronto you quit, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. I was just going to tell you,
right.
It was Toronto where I left the band because they were doing so much cocaine.
Yep.
And it just, I was in the real Lynyrd Skynyrd. I didn't want to be a part of something less. And, I smoke my weed. I like to smoke pot. It's for post-traumatic stress disorder. It helps a lot of people. There's a lot of benefits from cannabis. But the cocaine and all of that, heavy stuff, man, it just changes people. It turns them into assholes. It's horrible. I've seen so many people lose their lives over cocaine and heavy drinking, and Coke makes you want to drink the heavy scotch and Jack Daniels and all that stuff so you can level yourself out. And it's horrible for these people. I feel sorry for them. And the band, Gary and Dale and the entire band was so gluttonous. It was a gluttonous consumption of cocaine. I said, to hell with it. And I left the band. It broke my heart, believe me. But they had brought in another drummer that was basically a monster cocaine addict, and they were happy to have a guy on drums that snorted cocaine like they did, So I said, well, I guess the band's got a drummer that they like because they all snort a big lines before they play, and to me that was just like sick. And so I left in Toronto. I spent the day walking. I went to the top of the CN Tower with my son Marshall, who wrote music for the movie, by the way.
Yeah.
And
he wrote Southern Feeling Last Day by Marshall Pyle.
We got down to the bottom of the CN Tower after going up and watching airplanes flying under us. It was beautiful. Saw the whole panorama. Then we walked through Parliament. Marshall and I, he had his skateboard, and we walked and skated up through Parliament, which was beautiful. And we were staying at the Four Seasons, and we just had a great day. And then at the show that night, I just got so mad at everybody because they were like, out of their minds on drugs and alcohol, and I didn't want to play in a band like that. So anyway, I digress. I just, I love Gary Rossington, man. I miss him so much. But the management company, Vector Management, and his wife and Judy Van Sant, they separate Gary and I because that way there's more money for them to steal. And I played for the kings and queens of rock and roll all over the world with Gary Rossington, and I miss him. And I love the man. And he's had 7 heart attacks in the last 7 years.
Jeez.
And they just push him back out on the road to make that money for them. And he's off the road now, from what I understand. And they've got a band out there that they call Lynyrd Skynyrd that Judy allows, that she said she never would, with nobody from Lynyrd Skynyrd in the band. So,
isn't that strange? And by the way, I've always said this, and people always hate me for saying this, but I've always said brand is bigger than band, and I don't mean that as an insult to anybody, but it just goes to show that when you're Foreigner or when you're Quiet Riot or Lynyrd Skynyrd, just that name is going to bring fans in. It's a testament, by the way, to the music you've made, but it is sort of frustrating at the same time that you buy a ticket and you don't get to see anybody who had anything to do with it, Well,
I know it's frustrating for the fans and frustrating for people in the business like we are,
yep.
like you.
Yep.
I know it's frustrating, and brand is bigger than band, unfortunately.
Yep.
But I equate it this way. If, somebody advertises Elvis Presley, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you go see the Elvis Presley band, all right. And I just played a show with James Burton, Elvis's guitar player. And the other night I went to Steve Cropper, turned 80 years old in Nashville the
Wow.
night before we opened up for Dolly Parton. And I went to Steve Cropper's birthday party for 80 years old. And he's great. He's a wonderful person. And James Burton was there. Elvis is. So, it's like they advertise Elvis Presley, and then you get there and you go, well, where's Elvis? Well, with my band, Lynyrd Skynyrd, it's like Ronnie Van Zant was Lynyrd Skynyrd. And if Ronnie Van Zant is not in the band, you should not call it Lynyrd Skynyrd. I mean, I called my band All Points Bulletin, Artimus Pyle Band. I would never call my band Lynyrd Skynyrd because we're not. Ronnie Van Zant is not in the band, but my band plays Lynyrd Skynyrd music better than any band in the world. Ask anybody, I guarantee you. I'm so proud of them. They wrote a song for the movie called Street Survivors that I would put up against any Southern rock hit in the world, including Sweet Home Alabama, which, by the way, Neil Young from Canada. I love Neil. I've talked to Neil. Ronnie Van Zant loved Neil Young. Neil had written some songs, and Ronnie and Neil were going to get together. And I always have dreamt of what that would be. Southern Man meets Sweet Home Alabama. What would that song have been like that Neil and Ronnie would have written together? It gives me goosebumps to even think about it.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
And Neil had written songs for Ronnie and the band. But then, Ronnie was killed. And so that changed everything. With the day that I sat with Leon Wilkeson and we talked to Neil, he told us about the songs that he had written that he wanted to get together with Ronnie. We were in Gainesville, Florida, at a show there, and with Neil, and met Neil's mom. So the rumors that go around that Ronnie didn't like Neil Young because he says in Sweet Home Alabama, all he's saying in Sweet Home Alabama to Neil Young is, please do not blame all Southern men for racism because we're not all like that. Ronnie Van Zant loved people. If you were a good person, you're a good person. This is the way I feel as well. If you're a Black American or a Mexican American, or you're from Canada, or you're from Italy, or you're a gay American, Ronnie's view was, if you're a good person, then you're a good person, period. And that's all he was saying in the song Sweet Home Alabama, is not all of us Southern men, are racist. And I feel that way as well.
Yeah, no, a great song and a great message. And he's absolutely right. That's how I live my life. If you're nice to me, I'm nice to you. And then all the rest about what religion you're from or what race you're from, or I don't care. You're a good guy. I'm a good guy. That's how it should be.
That's it.
I will remind the folks that the CD for Street Survivors is available now. You can head over to cleorex.com and search up Street Survivors original motion picture soundtrack. And the film is exceptionally compelling, and you should definitely track that down. And as we say in Montreal, Artimus, thank you so much.
Well, just one thing, Mitch. I want to say the movie. I was as accurate as I possibly could be. For instance, we couldn't use the proper airplane because we didn't have a big enough budget. And, Judy Van Zant spent $2.5 million suing us to stop the movie. And I asked her and Gary to come to the table and do the movie with us. And, instead she got these attorneys and attacked me and Cleopatra. But that $2.5 million would have gone a long way. We could have used the proper airplane, but we used a C-117, which is called a tail dragger. And the plane that we crashed is tricycle landing gear with the tail up in the air. And they're very expensive, those Convairs. So we used a C-117. I used to fly on them all the time in the Marine Corps. They call them Goonie birds. But we did the best we could with what we had. So I want to tell you and the listeners, the movie is not for children. There's nudity, and which is accurate to the time period. There, people used to streak the stage, and girls would flash the band and everything, and we loved it. So there's bad language, and there's drugs and alcohol. So it's not for children, and it is a very intense movie. I had to make it from my point of view because I couldn't even mention our children. I didn't want Judy and her attorneys to have another reason to come at us. I didn't want to use any of the Lynyrd Skynyrd music because Judy would come at us, and I can't even use my own music. So I was very proud of my sons, Chris and Marshall, my band, APB, and all the guys out there in California, Christopher Rittenauer that wrote the Game of Thrones background music. And then my band wrote that, as you mentioned, Street Survivors. Please play it on your show sometime. It's a very strong song. And we wrote that together. Two of our guitar players, Jerry Lida and Scott Rains, co-wrote that with Warren Haynes. And I'm sure you're familiar with Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers and Government Mule. And he lives in Asheville, North Carolina.
I do. Yeah. Great.
But I just wanted to let the fans know that the movie is intense. It's not for children. And I don't make any money from the movie. I'm not trying to hawk and sell you something. I just wanted to tell the Skynyrd fans what happened. And so I came at it from my perspective because of our budget. I'm very proud of everybody involved. And thank you, so much, Mitch, for doing this. And thanks to John Lafon, out of Vegas, for hooking all of these interviews from Honolulu to Canada. And I believe this interview with you, Mitch, is the last one in the series because, of course, it was 44 years since the plane crash on October 20th. And but I as I said, I don't want to be sad anymore. And of course, I'm somber at this time of year. I'm reverent and everything, but I revel in the music. And I have 8 children and grandchildren that I play music with that are brilliant in spite of my dumbass. And, I'm 73 years old. I get to play music where everybody in the crowd knows every word to every song, fist bumps. And I'm happy. I'm a very happy 73-year-old. And, of course, there's a certain amount of sadness. I miss my friends. I love them, but we all live, we all die. It's how you live your life, right?
Yep, it's absolutely. And you certainly have left your mark with a lot of iconic music. And anyway, it's a powerful story, and I encourage folks to go check it out. And merci. Thank you, sir. Great pleasure.
Merci. I love Canada. Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good day.